today present the financial statements for the village of Taxley for the year ended December 31st, 2020. As it sits today, our audit is substantially complete. The financial statements, though, that you received in your council packet are still marked as unaudited because I'm not able to sign off on my audit report until Mayor and Council has had a chance to review and approve the financial statements. However, if it is Council's pleasure to approve the financial statements, I'm happy to report that we are proposing a clean audit opinion. So, in our opinion, these financial statements do present fairly the results of the village for the year ended December 31st, 2020. And with that, we'll walk through some of the highlights for you this year. Although I have a slideshow to keep everyone focused on it, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the statement. So when we look at the financial statements, it was a fairly stable year this year in spite of it being a pandemic. If we look at your total financial assets, they did drop. They dropped the cash you have or cash coming in from 3.48 million to 3.31 million. Your liabilities also did fall as well from 624,000 down to 384,000. And the biggest reason why the liabilities were so high last year was because of the capital funding that you had received and had not spent at that time. So if you look at your net financial assets, that's a measure of if we had to collect all the cash we have and pay out all of our liabilities, what will we have left? And you're sitting at 2.9 million, up slightly from 2.86 last year. And we're going to talk about when we look at your results of operations, what that means. And so now when we move ahead and look at your revenues for the year. Your total revenues came in at $3 million versus a budget of 3.35 and last year at 3.34 million. Now, obviously the big drop that happened this year was your government transfers. It was 2020, we were planning on doing a lot of capital. Obviously COVID-19 impacted it, so not as many projects happened. However, included in that government transfer number of 1.6 million was your COVID safe restart funding of 460,000. 60,000 if that COVID funding did not come in this year. And when we look at this and we look at your revenues as it breaks down by source, where's your 3 million come from? You know, half of it comes from government grants, which we do need to be concerned because we're seeing there's a lot of economic stimulus money still floating out there. And at what point are the federal and provincial governments going to need to cut back on some of the funding that they're going to be providing to communities? We also see that your property taxes come in at $780,000, which is about a quarter of your overall revenues that you have this year. So definitely that is on the lower side than what we see from many communities on the whole. Next, we'll look over to your expenses. And at the end of the day, your expenses came in at 3.1 million versus a budget of 3.09 million. So very close to budget this year. Obviously, with the freshet and everything that happened in the spring, we did see that, you know, transportation and protective services was overspent. And then we also saw some savings on recreation and culture with the health orders and not being able to run the facilities in the pool. But overall, very tight to your budget. And at the end of the day, you came in with a deficit this year for accounting purposes of $84,000. Last year, you were at a surplus of $521,000. And of course, you know that you didn't actually have a surplus last year of $521,000, and this year a deficit of 84. And that's because when you do your budget bylaw, you factor in capital projects and transfers from reserves in terms of what impacts your surplus. From an accounting side, we don't factor those in. So I like to break it down on the statement of changes of net financial assets by showing we start with our deficit of $84,000. We deduct all of our capital asset additions, so any capital projects, the pump house, those sorts of things, $488,000 spent last year. Add back amortization of your assets, which is a non-cash item that you don't tax for. And then we come to a net change of $73,000, which is what your surplus is for the year as compared to what you had budgeted for. Now, I want to be cautious when I say this to you because a budget or surplus of 73,000 is good, but remembering that you received $460,000 of COVID funding at the end of December, or at the end of November, sorry, which hadn't been spent. But that's included in your number here. If you didn't receive that, you would have ran a deficit of $390,000. So, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. And this is your accumulated surplus slide. And I know that, historically you've been using the Landfill Legacy Reserve to help fund operations, and that was the intention of previous councils and yours, but we're seeing that that's now coming to an end. And so I wanted to take a moment and pause on this slide and kind of talk about what you have in your reserves as it sits right now. Your total accumulated surplus is $16.5 million, which is the equity that you have, which sounds like a large number. But remembering that of that 16.5 million, 13.6 million is your equity in your tangible capital assets. Think about that as the equity in your home. That's how much you've spent on the infrastructure, the building we're sitting in, and all of the assets in the community. So that's not money that you have to spend. So we take that out, and you're left with 2.9 million. Now with that 2.9 million in surplus that you have, we look at the bottom two, or the lines for Community Works Fund and COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant. That's money that's been put in reserve that has specific criteria on how you have to spend it. So it's not something that council can just spend on freely or spend on operations. So we back out that 1.2 million, you're left with 1.7 million. If we look at that and we say, okay, well, in that 1.7 million, we have the residual of the Landfill Legacy Reserve, which now at the point where you're seeing it at about $1 million, isn't really money that's available to be spent anymore. That's there for emergencies, if there's a flood, if there's a fire, or anything else happens. We back that out, and you're left with $600,000 is what's sitting in your reserves right now on an annual budget of $3 million, which is quite low. And so I wanted to make sure that we highlighted that for council, because there is a concern, especially in smaller communities where you don't have a large tax base, where sometimes the grants can be harder to apply for because of the way that you would need to use them. Having a low level of reserve is problematic, and so it's something that I know that you've been looking at, and I encourage you to continue to look at that. And so those were the highlights of the financial statements. I'd like to open it up to council or anyone else that has any questions.
Do you have any questions coming in, Jessica? No. We've asked you a number of questions in the in-camera portion, and you've answered the questions we have. So, thank you for the input. Thank you for the knowledge to move ahead on with our taxation is very important. So I thank you for that. And council, you didn't have any questions?
So your comment about the landfill legacy, that we have been using that in the past, and that has been used even in the short time we've been in council as well, but that's not sustainable. So that's where you're saying that we need to be getting closer to having a proper reserve and a proper management program moving forward.
Yeah, that's correct. When we look at how the landfill legacy funds have been used and how they've been budgeted, and this, previous councils to you and where it's at right now, over the past 2 years, we've seen it drop from $3 million to $1 million. And that money has been used to fund operations. And so because now you're down to the last piece of it, that's where now you need to be looking at your operations and what it looks like without that money. Because, from what we've, unless there's something else happening, there isn't going to be a replenishment to that reserve.
So that practice isn't sustainable?
No, it is not.
running any deficit is not sustainable.
No, correct, unless you have large surpluses from before. And so, our recommendation is that as you move forward with your budget this year and your 5-year plan, is to look at your service levels and look at what the cost of maintaining the current service levels are, and look at it from the perspective of what revenues do we have to ensure that we maintain those service levels. And then at that point, the decision becomes, it's either you have to increase revenues to maintain it, or you need to reduce service levels.
Understood. Anything further? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
And if there's any other questions that you have that come up through the budgeting process, please do not be shy to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything, Jeff?
Great. Thank you. Motion to adopt?
I move that we adopt the financial statements presented by BDO Canada be accepted.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you again. Next up, we have the Hub Online Network.
That's me. So we hosted a pool forum online March 18th, and I just wanted to provide you with kind of the comments and questions that came out of it. We also did a survey and the results of that survey for you. So we had 4 people participate via Zoom and between 12 and 15 people watching on Facebook. 508 people have also viewed it to date.
Thank you.
And then I cut out the presentation part and posted that as well, and we had 275 people view that. So lots of people have viewed the information about the pool. I'm not going to provide you with the pool presentation unless you want it. You're welcome to check it out on our Facebook page. It's only a couple minutes long. But I basically just provided some data that I was able to find and extrapolated numbers so that people could kind of have a concrete number in their head as to what a pool actually costs and how much a pool costs to build and maintain and whatnot. So some comments made for those participating via Zoom. It was understandable why the pool didn't open last year with the floods, the work shortage, and repairs to the chlorination system. They're hoping that in the future money can be spent on a permanent chlorination system, and that there have been costly upgrades over the years. The pool is worn out, but there is no concrete data to back that up. And the questions from the public were, what can the public do to help ensure that we have a pool within the next year? How can we meet in the middle for this year and start to make plans to the future of the pool or new pool facility as soon as possible? Will council accept volunteers to clean the community hall so we can have a public meeting about the pool? What can we do to volunteer fundraise so we can have a pool this summer? The overall concern was we want answers and we were promised answers. So with the pool survey, we had 125 people respond. 110 of those answered yes, that they lived in Cache Creek. So I actually got rid of the answers to the other questions because I didn't feel that asking for a tax increase to people who didn't live in Cache Creek was acceptable. So I just took out their data. So on the charts, all you see is 110 people from Cache Creek that answered. And of that, almost 86% said yes, they were willing to have a tax increase. Didn't say a specific amount, but they were willing to have a tax increase. The majority of people, again, 86%, wanted the current pool repaired. And most people wanted a new facility built as well. Only 17% said no to build a new facility. The rest said yes. Either they didn't care indoor or outdoor, kind of. It was sort of mostly indoor was what the response was. And the majority of people would not be happy with a different water park of some kind. They want a pool.
Thank you. The minutes?
I move the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 15th be adopted as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Business rising from delegation? See none. Business rising from the minutes? Councillor Pittman.
Just a request on the follow-up on the report on the 5A, page 2, the application of the grants. And a follow-up report request for page 3, the interior health pool inspection permit application, please.
Anything further?
Oh, if I have to follow up on those grants? Well, maybe in the future when I will have more time, when the audit is going to be finished, now that it's finished and the budget is going to be implemented, then I will probably have more time to apply for grants. But at this point in time, I do not have that time.
The requests are noted.
Just that, oh, so you didn't apply for the permit either?
No.
Anything further? Committee reports? Economic Development, Councillor Peters and Councillor Coomer.
I have nothing.
Budget Administrative Services, Councillor Peters and Councillor Coomer.
In regards to the request that we had from the BC Interior Community Foundation a couple meetings ago,
Point of order, do we have to lift it from the table?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
I move that we lift the Cache
Thank
Creek
you.
Community Fund from the table.
Thanks very much.
second.
Discussion.
I put together information from some of the documents that we already had approved in the past, and I stole some from our friends in Lillooet and their community fund as well. So hopefully you've had a chance to go over this. If you're happy with it, then we can pass it on to them, and if you have any changes that you'd like to make, we can do that.
I move that we forward the fund summary and additional information as requested to the BC Interior Foundation regarding Cache Creek Community Fund as presented by Councillor Coomber.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Do we have anything in regards to the application process? Like what committee is on there to accept? Or are we not there yet?
Eventually, we'll probably be putting together a community committee to look at applications. But yes, I don't think we're...
I think next steps would be a policy probably outlining what our feelings on what should be criteria and those kinds of things. That would be my guess, that next step would be a policy and then a committee struck.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. And just for council's information, NDIT at their last intake did approve our 50,000.
Oh, thank God.
We were one of the last communities in the NDIT program to enroll in the Cache Creek Community Foundation. And rightfully so, because we didn't belong to it for many, many years. Federal gas tax fund, now called the Canada Community Building Fund. So it's not the gas tax, federal gas tax fund any longer. And they were doubling it in 222 and for the 1 year.
Does the change in name mean a change in criteria?
That I don't know. It didn't elaborate on the criteria that I was aware of. It was just announced that 2022 it would be doubling, and that would increase it to two $100,000 roughly installments or plus.
Yeah.
The recommendation that council receive and file the information or regarding the federal gas tax fund.
So moved.
Second, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Policy and bylaw review. Myself and Councillor Peters. Could you do that one, Councillor Peters?
I move that the request from Williams Lake First Nation be lifted from the table.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I move that council amend the buffer zone to 150 meters
I'll, se-
for bylaw 6-001.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor? I'll be opposed. Christina, please.
Who's opposed? Santo.
Village of Cache Creek bylaw 600-001.
I move that this item be lifted from the table.
Second.
Discussion.
Did we do the first? Did. I already lifted it. Yeah. Oh, so did, we voted on lifting the motion from the table?
We did.
Yeah, we did.
No,
No, we haven't?
you made a
No.
motion and a second, but you didn't actually say yes to the motion. You didn't actually.
Okay, thank you. So I will go back to the, thank you, request from Williams Lake First Nation, that this item be lifted from the table. So that was Sue and Wendy, but it was never, we didn't vote on it.
All in favor?
Yeah, we did because Santo was opposed.
No, that was lifting it from the table. We didn't vote on it.
Fair enough. Thank you for bringing that up.
So then we'll have to, I move that we amend the buffer zone to 150 meters on bylaw number 6-001.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? I was opposed.
Okay. Then I,
So the bylaw has to be,
so then we have to lift the bylaw from the table again. So I move that we lift the bylaw, item number 2, Village of Cache Creek bylaw 6-001 zoning amendment 2021, a bylaw to amend the Village of Cache Creek zoning bylaw number 423, that we lift it from the table.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor?
I move that the council give second reading to the Village of Cache Creek bylaw number 6001 zoning amendment 2021, a bylaw to amend the Village of Cache Creek zoning bylaw 423/1990.
Seconded. Discussion. All in favor?
This is as amended.
As amended, yes,
As
sorry.
amended.
And I move that council give final consideration and adopt the Village of Cache Creek bylaw number 6001 zoning amendment 2021, a bylaw to amend the Village of Cache Creek zoning bylaw number 423/1990 as amended.
Thank you. Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Do we need a third reading or? I see
I
only
think the
two.
first one was when we lifted it from the table. And then the second and final. So that
We
would
can
be
see clarification on that later.
So we can do final at the next one to see if we have to have a third and then final reading. Okay.
we, at our last meeting, we did give final consideration and adopt.
But we didn't lift it from the table.
We can today. I'll move that we lift adoption from the table.
You have a seconder?
Second.
Discussion.
Where are we at now?
Yeah, no.
We're off the page.
Fair enough. We'll get clarification for the next meeting.
And
Thank you.
finish it at the next meeting.
So are we going ahead with this?
No,
We've lifted it?
We're seeking clarification.
Okay.
Get clarification
Whether
for our
we-
next meeting. Next item.
So you just had a motion on the table though, right?
so we have to defeat.
So
the
you have to
motion.
defeat that motion.
Yeah.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
It's okay, I'm confused too.
The recommendation? Thompson Nicolander Community Business License Program.
I would like to see this tabled. I'm a little confused in reading all of the information, and I even went online and looked at some of the bylaws for some of the other communities on how the fees are dispersed. So I think how it works is if someone comes in and buys a business license from us, they pay the regular business license fee that we charge. So the business is based in Cache Creek. Then if they wish to buy the intercommunity business license, that's an additional fee. But do we keep that fee, or does that go to the committee, and is it dispersed amongst the communities? Like, where does that money go? That's my question.
It says on page 25, the fee for an intercommunity business license is $75 and shall be paid in full at the time of application and will be retained by the participating government that issues the
Well,
license.
thank you, I missed that one. Apparently, I thought I'd read the whole thing.
This has come up to council before, but it was years ago, and I think obviously council said not at this time. I don't know if we have the, what would you call it, the number of businesses who might be interested in this to make it worthwhile, but I guess my question would be, what are the advantages to us if you're doing a little research?
I would say that probably for the businesses that operate in Cache Creek alone, we should be able to retain that revenue and the licensing should be done in-house. Whereas for the businesses that really do business province-wide or regional-wide, where are they going to pay those fees? Are they going to pay them at the TNRD level? Are they going to pay them at Cache Creek level? That's the part that I don't know how it's going to be dispersed.
Okay.
Are we going to lose revenue? Those are considerations.
So I guess I'll second your tabling motion for further analysis of it.
How about we just defer motions to another meeting instead of tabling them?
Yeah.
Or say, I move that
can
we
amend
direct staff to get clarification on, or on the benefits to the village
And how much it's going to cost.
and how much it's going to cost before we move forward.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna have
I'll
to,
second.
we're gonna have to defeat the tabling.
It never
thing,
got
or no?
seconded.
Yeah, I just seconded it though.
The tabling it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't hear you.
Okay, all in favor?
It's all part of it.
Is there any further discussion on the matter? All in favor?
Oh.
Opposed?
I move we direct staff to get more information on the benefits and pros and cons of this program
And costs.
what costs there are for the village.
A second.
Discussion? Cost being the amount of labor or employee time it's going to take?
That too.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? Carried unanimously.
Because I think right now we just ask everybody to buy a business license, so we'll be out $25 on the ones that do it here, and then put a whole bunch on the other ones.
Public Works and Community Facilities, myself and Councillor Defoe. Interior Health Pool Inspection, the council received and filed a report from Interior Health.
So
That,
move.
this was already dealt with.
No,
It's on the agenda now.
it wasn't voted on.
It,
If you look at
it
the
was back in,
I'll second the
If you
motion.
look at the minutes, it wasn't voted on. There was a motion, but it was never voted on.
it was defeated,
No.
no?
I'll
as
I'll
per
second the
the
motion.
minutes.
And is there any further discussion? Do you have discussion, Councillor Peter?
I
Or Councillor Peters?
refer Councillor Pittman to page number 3 of our minutes, D1, motion failed, no vote called.
Okay, so now what I have to do,
We're in the discussion phase.
okay, well, because there was already a motion on this.
Do we have any
interior-
discussion? All in
Yes,
fa-
I do. I want the motion that council directs senior staff to apply for the construction permit as per the Interior Health Authority inspection report for the chlorination system.
Is there anything further on the recommendation? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Opposed?
Thank you.
I'll second Councillor Pittman's motion.
Thank you.
Let's have the motion.
The motion that council directs senior staff to apply for the construction permit as per the Interior Health Authority inspection report for the chlorination system.
Do we have a second?
Yeah,
Aye.
let me second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Yeah, the motion fails. It's defeated.
Village Services and Liaison, Councillor Defoe and Councillor Coomer.
The Equality Project is putting together a proposal to put in a community garden on their property. I would move that council provide a letter of support for the society for their application for a Government of Canada Local Food Infrastructure Fund grant.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
My own, yeah.
Councillor Pittman.
My concern with this one is that it might be a conflict if we as a community wanted to apply for this same infrastructure fund for the community within our community. As this application here would be just for their members of their equality project.
Thank you. Councillor,
My only concern is
Peters.
the location that they have it, that I would ask that they make sure that they have bank stabilization in place.
They're putting fences along the bank, so it cannot be accessed.
No, I'm thinking flooding issues, because they had one tree that almost came out last year.
all in favor? Thank you.
Opposed?
Thank you. Protective Services, myself and Councillor Coomer. The recommendation is that council move forward with the development of a mayor's task force on community safety, security, and well-being, or receive and file.
I will move the first recommendation that council move forward and we'll wait and see if it gets a second.
I'll second it.
Discussion.
And see what everyone thinks of it and whether people have changes or whether people think it's...
the key thing for me is, next steps would be to contact all the parties that you listed and make sure that there is support or interest from those entities.
Mhm.
I would like to raise the issue with Sergeant Agman, principally at the onset, at the very preliminary stages, and discuss the ins and outs with him,
Thank you.
and see if there's any value in moving forward.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Pittman opposed. Intergovernmental relations, myself and Councillor Coomer. You want to take that, Councillor Coomer?
We,
From the table.
I'll move that this item be lifted from the table.
Second. Discussion. Go ahead.
Oh, we have to vote to lift it from the table.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Any further, is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That council, and go ahead.
So I was unclear at the last meeting whether we actually were in favor of this or whether we just kind of moved ahead because we thought it was the way to go. I would be happy to move that we enter the program if you like, but if there's some reservations around council, then we can just receive and file.
Yeah, my concern is the cost.
There is no cost.
It's $5,000.
No, it's going to be carried by NRD. It's no cost to us. I already checked.
Oh,
Oh, okay, because that was a
Yeah, that was-
concern of,
that
was
my concern
$5,000?
too, and I confirmed, and they told me that there is no cost to the village.
They're asking for our enrollment, and it's $7,000.
Oh, so we still have,
So it's still.
we do have a cost?
There's
Oh,
a,
that
there's
was
a,
clear
there's,
now.
yeah, there, it could be 5 and it could be 7. I'm not sure
Oh.
which it is. So don't quote me on that figure, but there is a cost associated with
Yeah,
it.
I thought so too.
Yeah. And it's a cost.
And this isn't in the budget.
Yeah, well, I didn't put it in because I
Yeah.
asked the question and I was told that there is no cost to us.
Yeah, fair enough.
I would move that the Village of Cache Creek opts to not become a member municipality at this time.
Second.
But
Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
So that we don't lose it, but not right now.
Landfill Advisory Committee, myself and Councillor Coomber. So,
we have a meeting coming up, but I have no report at this time.
thank you. And just for council's information, we are sending out the landfill trust budget amounts every month instead of quarterly. Emergency Management Committee, Councillor Defoe and Councillor Peters.
Just that we're starting to work towards getting things ready. We've ordered the HESCO bins to be used at the fire hall. They won't come probably for another week or two. And then, unfortunately, we can't apply for anything else until we get a task number, and we can't get a task number until we begin to incur costs. So,
Well, we used, I believe in the past we were able to receive a task number before we ordered the sand.
I asked about it, I asked Sylvia Chow and I asked Mike Knopf,
Yeah.
and that was the response. And it's under the financial guidelines.
Hmm.
They said that if we were to supply the sand and have a stockpile of sand, that they would replenish it when it was used. But unless we have a task number in place and are incurring flood-related costs, we can't get a task number till the water's rising.
Oh, it is rising.
Thank you for being proactive. Information correspondence? Council to discuss request made by Carmen Ranta, that council draft a response or that council receive and file.
The response could be that we're still in budget processes and there will be a public consultation as part of that process. No decisions have been made.
Second that motion.
Second.
I second the motion.
Oh, did you? Sorry.
Discussion.
That we respond just saying that we're,
Okay.
we're in the budget process and that there will be public consultation. Okay. As part of that process.
Discussion? All in favor? Province of BC Regional Call Update.
Move to receive and file.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? Carried, thanks. New business? Questions from the public?
I do have a question. I just have a question about the motion that Councillor Pittman made about the construction permit. In the minutes on page 3, there was a motion and a second and a carried motion regarding the applying for a construction permit, and yet tonight you
Oh,
made it as if it hadn't had a proper motion.
That's what we said, we were dealing with that motion in the agenda. She can bring that motion up if she wishes, but she didn't.
it had already been, her point is it had already been carried. I was reading the wrong part on the motion failed and the vote called.
So there, at the previous meeting, there wasn't a receiving
Right.
file. She made a motion, and it was carried. So I just
Yes.
wanted clarification on, 2 weeks ago, you carried a motion to receive a file permit, but today you haven't had.
Okay, yeah. It was passed.
I just want clarification, because it does, in your minutes, you have it
Yeah.
carried.
Yeah, but 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the invasive
No.
plant program was accepted and now.
No, but
No.
this one was done properly
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it was carried.
Okay.
So,
I know it's confusing because you had a lot of ones that were not done properly, but this one
This
appears
one,
proper
yeah.
on your minutes.
So that's-
So I just wanted clarification because it was confusing for myself.
Yes. So it was.
So I just, which motion is correct? The one that you made 2 weeks ago or the one tonight?
Both.
2 weeks ago.
it would have to be
Oh,
voted 2
can't
weeks
be
ago.
correct because they're opposing.
No, it would be not.
We'll sort it
The
out.
one 2 weeks ago, because it was made and carried.
That has to stand.
Anything further, Jessica?
That's all I had. I have nothing else from.
Thank you. So we'll ensure that that original motion is brought to the CFO's attention, and we'll further shed light on that in the in-camera portion if you wish. Okay.
Oh,
No,
hang on, sorry, I apologize. I do regular questions from the journal? So a question from the journal. At the previous meeting, council voted unanimously to join the Thompson-Nicola Invasive Plant Management Program. What caused council to change its mind and vote no at this meeting?
Well, it wasn't unanimous because I opposed it.
Okay.
So it wasn't unanimous.
Further budget discussions for me.
Thank you. Anything further, Jessica?
No.
Thank you.
Much further, thank you.
Okay, I have a motion to move into closed.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?